I've been a journalist for 30 years, but I've never seen what the world saw unfold in the Oval Office at the White House in the last few hours, as Zelensky was quite literally shown the door by President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. What unfolded has polarized global opinion. The first 40 minutes seemed to be peaceable, and then, quite literally, all hell broke loose. But at the end of these verbal blows, and for a moment it looked like they could get worse than verbal, what does it mean for geopolitics? Is it Zelensky who's been squeezed dry of options? Or is it President Trump who's lost his opportunity to say he was the one who ended the Russia-Ukraine war? I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. If you saw what unfolded in the Oval Office at the White House, your jaw probably dropped. In full glare of cameras, the world watched this. President Trump and J.D. Vance read the riot act to Zelensky, who actually came there to sign a minerals deal. It was supposed to be a moment that would lead to a possible end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Instead, Trump has been accused by his critics of sounding like he was supporting Vladimir Putin. And he's been congratulated by his supporters for upholding American interests and basically drawing the red line with Zelensky, who was asked to leave, not even given lunch, and the joint press conference was cancelled. Zelensky later did make it a point to thank the American people and President Trump, something he was routinely asked to do, and he was asked more than once in that meeting in the Oval Office as to why he was not being grateful enough. I don't think I have ever seen an Indian diplomat or an Indian politician speak like this to our worst adversaries, not even Pakistan and not even in the middle of a war. What do we make of all of it? It's wildly entertaining, yes, as journalists, but is it also dangerous? Is it a new kind of diplomacy? Is it a new world order? How do we understand what happened? Let's introduce our very distinguished panel today as we try and make sense of the Trumpian age that we now live in. Sri Srinivasan is with us. He's a CEO of DigiMentors and the president of the South Asian Journalists Association based out of New York. Good to see you, Sri. Seema Sirohi is with us. She's a veteran journalist and author. She's covered geopolitics for decades. And I'm dying to ask her if she's ever seen anything like this. And if she hasn't, what does she make of it? We'll find out in just a moment. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Dilip Sinha is with us. Ambassador Sinha, I'm wondering if you're now regretting all the moments that you could have shouted at somebody in the room and didn't. I'm just dying to find out how the very conservative, measured Indian diplomatic corps is looking at all of this. Prasad Davuri, an entrepreneur based out of the US, is with us. Good to have you back with us, Prasad. And also joining us is author and analyst who's been having, posted some very funny comments on X. Ornav Ray is with us as well. Good to see all of you. Before we get first comments, for anybody who's been hiding under a rock, basically, let's play out a couple of clips. Trump telling Zelensky, hey, hang on. You don't have any cards. The only cards you have are held by us. So you better listen up or else. And eventually the or else comes true. Let's take a look.
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on out here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
it doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what.
That
what
wasn't
is
with me.
Absolutely astonishing. I'll start with you, Seema, before I come to Ambassador Sinha. DC is divided, right? Depending on who you talk to, Zelensky was either a hero or a fool. The first 40 minutes of this 49 and a half minute meeting are not as stormy. And then at some point, Zelensky starts talking about Putin, and JD Vance jumps in and says, you're not supposed to be here litigating with us against Putin. Let's talk about what you came to talk about, and all hell breaks loose. How do you, before we come to how DC is divided, how do you, as somebody who has covered more of these Oval Office meetings than you can probably count, how do you see what happened? How do you make sense of it, Seema Siroli?
Hi, thanks for having me. I haven't seen anything like this before. I've covered 6 presidents, and it was just, a disaster from beginning to end. Not the first 40 minutes, but the last 10 minutes. What I was struck by, because I watched the whole thing, is that in the beginning, President Trump was in a good mood. Everybody was, playing their role the way they were expected to. And then President Zelensky decided to give a history lesson and go back to 2013, 2014, Crimea, and all of that. And that kind of ticked off JD Vance. Of course, many people in DC believe that he deliberately kind of ambushed Zelensky. I don't quite agree with that. I think it was building up. Remember the history of the recent negotiations. Uh, Zelensky hasn't sort of endeared himself to this administration. The Treasury Secretary came back very unhappy with his meetings in Kiev. And when he said that Trump is a victim of Russian disinformation, that all just made people here in DC very upset. Question is, Zelensky came here to sign this deal, otherwise he shouldn't have come, right? He should have signed the deal, had lunch, and gone home. Instead of litigating this thing in public, you are on camera. You saw how previous European leaders sort of acted with Trump. There's a way to interact. What happens behind closed door ended up happening in front of all of us. So I think Zelensky overplayed his hand a little bit, and he's much weaker today than he was a day ago. So he had to go home with nothing in his pockets.
So when you say, Seema, that it was a disaster, it was a disaster for Zelensky, or was it also a disaster for Trump, who very much wanted this deal?
Yes, it's more of a disaster for Zelensky because he has zero options, right? Without the US support, whether it's military weapons, financial assistance, or intelligence sharing, they can't operate. Remember, all of the attacks the Ukrainians are able to execute so efficiently is because the US is sharing intelligence. It is a proxy war with the West. It's Ukraine is not fighting alone here. Everybody is helping Ukraine and the US most of all. Now, it is true that Trump wanted this deal as well because he wants to go down in history as a peacemaker, which he said very clearly yesterday before everything went south. And he's been in touch with Putin, and he thinks that he can make a deal. So everybody wants this war to end. It is also true you can't go on fighting. The Europeans don't have the stomach for this fight forever. So there has got to be a way to end this war. This would have been a way because the presence of Americans on Ukrainian soil would have deterred Putin. After all, Putin is not stupid, right? He's not going to attack American engineers who are digging for rare earth minerals, right? So, but Zelensky, by saying that no ceasefire, I want security guarantees before, it just shouldn't have happened the way it did.
So effectively, you think Zelensky is the loser in this round. Trump doesn't lose anything very much. He probably has more leverage to close this war, to strike a deal. Before I come to Ambassador Sinha, the moment that Seema is talking about, JD Vance gets ticked off. Zelensky starts with a kind of history lesson on what Putin has done before, when there has been talk of a ceasefire and so on. And then, oh my God, everybody's left holding their faces, their jaws dropping to the floor. Take a look at how JD Vance goes for Zelensky.
I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
So, Ambassador Sinha, the one thing for sure is that diplomacy has been upended as the world knows it. Probably the most peaceful meeting that has taken place between any world leader and President Trump has been with Prime Minister Modi, at least in the last, I would say, some weeks. Even Keir Starmer had his moments of tension, of disagreement. Same with Macron and Zelensky, of course, we know. But, the next time a world leader steps into that Oval Office, right. I agree with Seema. Zelensky has no options, but there is a larger conversation here about how diplomacy is conducted, the tone you take. I'm sure in your lifetime, you've had many, many, many stormy meetings with people of other countries, leaders of other countries, but you would do it behind closed doors. Trump and Vance very mindfully do this. And Trump at one point says, it's good, let the American people see this. As a diplomat, what were you thinking when you were watching this, Ambassador Sinha?
But, I'm still trying to understand. We all saw what happened, but why did it happen? Why did the leaders allow this kind of a thing to happen? That is something that's very difficult to understand. As you quite rightly said, these things happen behind closed doors. Now, President Trump says at a particular point that it's a good thing that the American people get a chance to see what is happening. Now, what is surprising here is that a major disagreement on security guarantee was allowed to be left open before these two leaders went before the media. Now, had Zelensky agreed that he would sign the minerals deal without security guarantee? Did he go back on his word? Or did Trump expect that he would put Zelensky in a trap, put him in front of the media, and then make him accept that point? Because Zelensky was quite clearly very adamant on getting security guarantee. And I don't blame him for that. After all, if he's going to sign out upon his minerals, then the least he can expect is that the 80% territory that he still has left will be guaranteed by somebody like the US. Now, why was this meeting called before the media without this issue being resolved? Now, this happens occasionally when new leaders come and they think that they know everything, that their charm and their personal charisma would carry the deal through. I don't want to name any examples, but there have been instances in the past where diplomats are overlooked or sidelined by leaders, and they try and solve these things at a summit meeting, perhaps even before the media, rarely before the media, but they try and solve it behind closed doors between the two of them. And that often backfires. In this particular case, they went in front of the media and tried to resolve this issue of Zelensky's desire for a security guarantee, which Trump was not prepared to make. And of course, I think what put off Trump was the fact that Zelensky referred to Putin as a killer. Now, there's also the past where J.D. Vance accuses Zelensky of having come in October to the US and having campaigned against him. So there's also that domestic angle that plays out with Trump all the time. He, at least 3 or 4 occasions, he calls Biden stupid.
Yeah.
And it's Zelensky who has to remind Trump that he's your president.
Yeah.
So this was a completely unprecedented thing where Zelensky, of course, did he walk into that trap? In any case, he could not have gone back to Kyiv after an insult. So he had to speak up.
Yeah.
So while we can certainly say that that Zelensky has no cards with him, that is quite true. But the fact is that he had to stand up for his country.
This reference of Trump referencing Biden as stupid. I mean, I take your point that Zelensky took a side in a domestic political sort of election season, and nobody smart does that. But I just want to play out this clip because honestly, for all the domestic tutu meme of our politics, I cannot imagine any scenario where Modi, Manmohan Singh, Rahul Gandhi, anybody would be sitting with the head of state of another country and refer to their predecessor as stupid. It really struck me as an Indian. We may call each other all kinds of names, but this would never happen. And I just want to play out that clip briefly and come right back to all of you.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait
answer?
a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
Yes. What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
So he effectively, as I said, referred to Biden as stupid. I don't think there's any moment I can remember in India that would actually play out in the way that this did. But Sri, I think the point that Seema's making is Trump is left holding all the cards. Zelensky isn't. And that's just the Darwinian age we live in.
Well, this was definitely an ambush. You could see it. J.D. Vance, while Zelensky was talking about one thing, pivots to the point about being thankful. There's a man who's been grateful to America every time you see him. There were so many lies told at this by people who lie every day, and that's Trump and Vance. So the $350 billion number you just mentioned, it's closer to like $150 billion. Europe has given more money than the US. And of the 70% of the money that the US has given, it has gone back into domestic US arms production. So it's not money that just goes, it's not given as money to go in cash for Zelensky to use as a yacht. There are all these lies that are perpetrated. And what you saw there was the first time, clearly, Trump said it's great that you're doing this in front of the media and that he's looking bad, Zelensky's looking bad. But you also saw, for the first time, Americans understood that a sitting US president and vice president are siding with their biggest enemy, Vladimir Putin. And that's a problem. And that was the first time we saw it. So when you add this up, Zelensky could have done much better than he did. But you saw that entire atmosphere. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a right-wing conservative, her boyfriend asked that famous question, why aren't you wearing a suit? Everyone knows why he's not wearing a suit. He's said that as long as he's commander-in-chief and the war is on, he will not wear a suit. Nobody asked that question when Elon Musk goes in there dressed as some crypto bro and tech bro. Nobody asked why he's not wearing a suit, right?
Yeah.
So these are all built, the narrative is built to make Russia look good and Zelensky look bad. This was understood from the beginning. If you think that the world is divided, it isn't. There are definitely people who are on the side of what Trump has done, but look at every single European leader who tweeted immediately after this. The presidents, prime ministers of every major European country tweeted their support of Ukraine. Every single one. They didn't have to do that. They did it because what they saw was so terrible at a time that they would not have expected.
So are you saying that while Zelensky could have been better, and that's the scroll sheet we have of all of the EU leaders, so it's become an EU versus America moment as well. I don't know where it went, but it was right there. My question to you, Sri, is that what's the downside? What's the downside for Trump? Briefly, because I want to play out that question when he was asked why don't you wear a suit? What's the downside?
The downside is you are seeing that what we have said and seen for a long time, that Trump is on the side of Russia and not on the side of America and not on the side of its biggest allies in Europe. This is the first time it's that clear. You heard him say just the days before, you said he's a dictator. You said that Zelensky is a dictator. And these lies are just perpetuated because there are not enough people pushing back. And so that's what we need to do. And we need to be really clear about this. To my mind, Zelensky is a hero, somebody who stood up and fought when his country was invaded, while Trump is somebody who didn't go to war getting fake medical diagnosis so that he didn't have to go to the Vietnam War. That's the person who is being attacked by the Trump world and everyone who supports Trump and what they saw there. But this also shows us why diplomacy should not be done in public, not be done in front of the media. As you heard the ambassador said, all of this should have been done in advance and prepared. But this is what the chaos that Trump likes, you saw in real time.
So I think it's fair to say that the same event sees Zelensky as either a fool or a hero. Sri sees him as a hero. But where does it leave Trump? What happens now? Is the EU really prepared to fund Ukraine's effort? Probably the answer is probably not. But before we come to that, this question asked from a member of the press corps who, as you said, is the boyfriend of a major right-wing conservative a public figure in the US. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I look at all of this, you don't know whether to laugh or, how do you understand it? Because Modi wasn't asked, the Saudis weren't asked, why don't you wear a suit? Was there a sense that Zelensky was being kind of too chilled? Being very casual? Let's listen to this question. Why don't you wear a suit? Asked of Zelensky.
Second
My
question.
second question for President Zelensky. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
dignity of
such.
this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like this?
like yours.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for.
Arnab, that was actually, I thought, quite cleverly answered by him. He said, I'll wear a costume after this war is over. Maybe it'll be cheaper than yours. But it was a pretty sneering question. And whatever your views are of how Zelensky fumbled, messed up, gave a history lesson, seemed arrogant, seemed casual, why would anyone ask anyone, why don't you wear a suit? I mean, Prime Minister Modi doesn't wear a suit when he travels abroad. He wears a churidar kurta for most part with a Nehru jacket. The Saudis wear their own traditional dress. I mean, and I can go on, give many examples. There's something surreal. There's a quality of the surreal to everything that happened. How did you see it?
So the first thing to understand is that much of what you saw today was performative in order to ingratiate yourself with Trump. So both the performance of J.D. Vance as well as Marjorie Taylor Greene, MGT's boyfriend, was not directed so much at anybody else but at Trump. It was basically a way to show, look, I am bending my knee lower than the guy next to me. This is basically what 30 days of Trump presidency has been. Now, as you said, we Indians totally understand this. We have seen it in every government office growing up. So this is not new, but maybe this is new for the US. Now, in terms of the question specifically asked, Trump actually had made that comment initially when he had first come about his suit. He had made a snarky remark. So the difference between him and Modi is very simple, is that for Modi, that is considered to be the official garb of an Indian. So he's not he's not showing up wearing a lungi or a banyan, right? That would be different. So in the case of, they're actually culturally aware to know the difference. Now, the problem with Zelensky, I have lots to say. With Zelensky, he had a blow up with Biden too. on exactly the same issue. It didn't happen in public. It happened in 2022, where Biden felt that he was very flip and he was not showing enough gratitude to what Biden was doing. So this has been, he walked into that impression that people had of him. It started with the suit. Again, this is like showing up to an interview. They see him as somebody who's there asking for money. And so when it's like asking, it's like you show up to a job interview and you're not even wearing a suit. So this is a huge deal for people like Trump, because it is all about the power play. And with respect to JD Vance, the point that I would like to say, and I've seen the full thing, this was, I don't agree that this was an ambush. This was not agreed beforehand. For 45 minutes, everything was going very well. What happens is that Trump, this is a technique that he has. So he will throw out a lie. And his trick is that in order for you to be a supplicant, you need to say, yes, sir, that is absolutely true. What Zelensky did was he actually called him out on it. He kept on saying, you know what, Putin, treaties won't matter. All he had to do was keep quiet. That's all he had to do. And when he did that, I don't think even Trump realized that he had been insulted. JD Vance put it in Trump's head, because JD Vance is making a play with Elon Musk to show who is more loyal, right? So that's why he stepped in right at that point of time. And then Trump realized, I wonder why he did that. Now Trump starts thinking, look at his face. He is not offended initially. He gets into it later. Since I'm an author, I get this, the body language and everything. And at that point of time, Zelensky, that was the mistake he made. If you are there as a supplicant, you have to play your role. You cannot be a hero there. And just as a point of, we in India, we won the war too, right? Against Pakistan. We still could not get Azad Kashmir back. So the point is, he's basically saying, that I am morally superior. I am the victim. And when somebody's trying to push for a treaty, you cannot say that.
So you also think Pakistan occupied Kashmir, by the way, to be factual on India's position, not Azad Kashmir. But my point is, you believe Zelensky messed up,
yes,
and Zelensky, and Trump's fragile ego was inflamed by JD Vance, and all of these men were trying to outperform each other in their alpha maleness.
Yes.
I mean, one of the thoughts I had today. I cannot think of 3 women who lead countries who would have had this conversation. I'm sorry to say this. I cannot think of it. Maybe you all can. Not to gender this conversation unnecessarily, just a strict sidebar. So Arnab, you believe that JD Vance played his part in stoking the fire. Trump, left to himself, would not have done this. Therefore, you don't think it's an ambush. Correct?
No, I don't think it was an ambush. Everything was planned. The minerals were essential. So it was not as if America didn't care for this deal. It was just 10 minutes of madness, of human madness. And it happens all the time. It's like 3 people, one person has an ulterior motive to the Musk thing that he did. And then, of course, Zelensky should have backed away, and he didn't.
Yeah. All right. Before I come back to Seema and Ambassador Sinha for many geopolitical questions I have, Prasad, I mean, your take, right? Do you laugh? Do you hold your head? Do you say, oh my God? Arnab just said in India, we'd be familiar. Yes, in India, we're familiar with the culture of sycophancy. I totally agree, but we're not. We also still have that veneer of tehzeeb, of politeness, of doing things darwaze ke piche, not camera ke aage. So what did you make of it? Can we unmute Prasad?
Yeah, thanks, Barkha. Yeah, I think Ambassador Sinha asked a very pertinent question early on when he was speaking as to what was the motive behind everything that we saw? Why did that happen? I think Trump got into this meeting with Zelensky looking for lithium and titanium. And Zelensky came into this meeting looking for security guarantees. There was fundamentally a disconnect in the goals that each wanted to achieve. Zelensky, his take, I think, was that the US has already spent $100 billion with or without any 100 plus billion. That number is debatable. But whatever it is, the US has spent X billion dollars on this war and have not gotten any collateral or anything against it That's Trump's claim, right? So Trump is saying, well, I need something first for all what has already been spent. So I need minerals at 50% discount or whatever that is, right? Zelensky is saying, wait a minute. These guys have already spent the money. I have not given them any guarantees. Let me try and hold them by the neck and try and extract a little bit more in terms of security guarantees, because I think I'm in a better negotiating position, considering that Trump is a pure businessman and he's looking at this as a transaction that is wherein he's at the wrong end. So I think there was a lot of all of that playing in the background, which was not sorted out prior to this meeting, and I think that is what led to this. And I think whatever it be, the fact is it is Zelensky who needs help. When we talk about attire and how all of the other dignitaries and the leaders of other states behaved with Trump in these last 3 weeks, and why Modi did a damn good job, he was very focused, absolutely focused on what is it that India wants out of this. Because there were instances during our prime minister's meeting, and Trump mentioned publicly with the prime minister next to him about tariffs and how India is so harsh and how it has gotten away with. Our prime minister's expression was placid, just absolutely stoned. No expression, no disagreement or agreement or whatever. And that's because he was focused on what he wanted. Zelensky probably did not do the homework, and whether he's right or wrong, whether he's a hero or not, I don't think he came to prove that. He came there to get security guarantees, and he left without those.
So that's the operative question, and let me take that to Seema, because it's been raised a couple of times now in this program. That was homework not done. Was there a lack of homework, Seema, before this meeting, not just by Zelensky, but possibly also by the White House? Because if Trump was looking forward to signing this deal, then presumably, as Ambassador Sinha asked, they would have got the question of whether they were willing to offer security guarantees out of the way before Zelensky came to the White House. I mean, what do we know about that, Seema Sirohi?
Well, whatever we know is contained in the first 40 minutes of this press conference. If you watch it carefully, it seems everything had been worked out. How warm Trump was towards Zelensky. He praised the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers. He supported NATO, these are all signals to the Europeans, to everybody who's watching. And then there was a gotcha question about who do you align with? Do you align with Putin? So he said, I align with the world. I want peace. I want this war to end. From reading between the lines, it seems all that had been worked out. But then Zelensky sort of overplayed his hand. So I would say maybe he was not clear in why he was in Washington, what he was expected to do. And, I don't want to over psychoanalyze everybody as, Trump is this way or Zelensky is that way. No, there are just some facts on the ground. That's what one should go by, I think.
So you don't think it was a setup? You don't think it was an ambush?
It was not an ambush. If you watch it, Zelensky is telling Vance, you haven't come to Ukraine. You don't come to the White House and start talking over the president. You don't talk over the vice president. You show some etiquette yourself. I know you've been fighting this war, etc. But there is a specific purpose to this meeting. And if you want the relationship with the United States to continue, you go with that as on top of your mind. So he was mocking J.D. Vance. I agree that J.D. Vance has his own domestic political agenda. He's not getting enough headlines, and Musk is seen as the co-president, etc., etc. But I think that's a sideshow. And I don't think that was the pivotal problem here. The problem was that Zelensky just blew it. I'm sorry. He blew the meeting and he has nothing to show for it. And of course, the Europeans came out in support on X. They have to, but let's see how long that lasts and what they can actually do. Trump, in the first 40 minutes, was even agreeable to having European peacekeepers. in Ukraine, something that was told to us earlier that Putin is totally against, right? So, what does that mean? That Trump is willing to fight for that, or would be part of the deal making. Not everything about security guarantees can be worked out because it's also tenuous.
Yeah.
But
So,
this is a book that could have kept Trump involved. I'm sure he will stay involved because he does want this
want the day.
to end.
Absolutely. Sri, I want to bring you in before Ambassador Sinha because Seema has a completely different perspective from yours, and she basically thinks Zelensky blew it. And Trump is, as he reminded Zelensky, left with holding the cards in his hand. Your take?
Fareed Zakaria had a great joke on the Bill Maher show last night. He said what Zelensky should have done is come in with a medal for Trump and saying, this is a brand new medal. This is the highest order of merit we've ever given. This is for you. You're the greatest man. All of that. We saw Starmer do that. Macron do elements of that where they were praising him, and that part of it Zelensky didn't do enough. But this is a man who's been attacked every day by Trump and Vance and Musk and everyone else. The amount of pressure on this man is incredible, and the lies. I mean, we have charts to show you how much aid has been given to Ukraine by
Europe. I think we have that chart. You just shared that data with us. If we can bring it up on share screen. But go ahead, Sri.
Yeah, and so these are things. So you see, the U.S. is given by GDP the 17th most amount of money. Just imagine. So that's one thing. There's another chart that shows that with promised aid, Europe is giving twice as much as America. It's already given more than America. It's going to get twice as much. So it isn't we're going to see things play out. No one knows where this is all going to go. But again, the bottom line of all of this is that an American president is siding with his Russian enemy. America's enemy is Russia, and he's siding with him. Whatever else, Russia has other roles to play in the world, but not a good role to play in Ukraine. We saw that. And to say that he was not Putin wasn't the one who invaded, wasn't the one who provoked all this, is just, you have to sit and listen to these people who are saying that. Look at this, this just tells you the lies that Trump can say. 350 billion when it's 125, and 70% of that aid is spent in the US. Nobody talks about this. 70% of the aid, and that's an example of the lies that are perpetuated and become accepted in this time.
But, point taken about the spend. But I think the question, Ambassador Sinha, is how far will Europe go in taking this responsibility on if the Americans choose to walk away from it? Question one. Question two, Zelensky left for London. There's a major summit there. Starmer, is Keir Starmer really going to personally, at his level, take on Trump? He was not among those who tweeted. There were individual UK MPs. Of course, the UK Foreign Office released a statement, but Starmer didn't do it at his level. What do you think is going to happen next? I mean, this can go two ways. Tempers cool down. There's a de-escalation. Everybody comes back to the dialogue table. Trump still gets to sign this deal, or like Putin, chuckles his way to the White House next. I can't hear Ambassador Sinha. Yeah, start again, sir.
Yeah, it seems that Zelensky would be willing to go for a deal. After all, he is signing off on his extremely precious mineral resources. Trump himself mentioned that in the course of the interview. And it's now quite obvious that both Russia and America are interested in Ukraine because of its natural resources. But while Putin went about it in the old imperial way of invading Ukraine, like emperors used to do earlier, in the case of Trump, he wants to sign a deal. As he says, he's a deal maker. But he's not prepared to pay the price for it, which is giving a security guarantee to Ukraine. Now, Europeans have to step up. They have been basking in America's support all these years, all these decades, as a matter of fact. Now, in the last vote that took place in the UN, the recent thing, America, when its resolution in the General Assembly was amended by the Europeans, then America voted against that resolution, although it was America's resolution. But in the Security Council, when Russia vetoed the European amendment, uh, the European Union did not veto, Britain and France did not go against the resolution. They simply abstained. Now, they could have as well vetoed it, for which they have the power. But the Europeans have got used to not exercising, the Europeans, meaning the Brits and the French, have got used to not exercising their veto. They think that America's job to do all this. So these countries have to step up now. They must understand that America will not give it support for free, certainly not Trump. And they have to meet now in London and think over the whole thing. And they have to step up not only in terms of economic assistance to Zelensky, but also political support both in Europe and in the United Nations.
Arnab, let's bring you in. I mean, there is hard politics and then there is domestic politics. How's this going to play out for Trump? And, the point was made by Trump's critics that Andrew Tate, a man accused of rape and sexual trafficking, I saw comments saying, oh, he got a better welcome back to the US than Zelensky did. That's how Trump's critics are playing it. Trump's critics don't, those who have always been Trump's critics, they don't matter right now in his domestic politics. But is this going to discomfort anybody who otherwise supports Trump?
No. So the point that I want to make is that actually Trump walked out of this entire fiasco looking much better than when he came in to his base. So first thing you have to understand that Trump does not see his country in the way most other presidents or prime ministers see their country. He sees his country as people who voted for him and people who didn't vote for him. So even when you started out by saying that he called Biden stupid, so the way he sees himself as the classic king, right? So if you have made a deal with the previous king, why are you bringing it up? As a matter of fact, I defeated that king. He said it later. I defeated him massively. So that king doesn't count. So for him, the country is not really the country. It's like different kind of kings. And now he is the king. So you have to make a deal with him. You have to say thank you to him. Now, the other thing that I think is often not covered is that for us who grew up watching, Rocky IV, where Russia or USSR is the greatest enemy, that has changed in the US over the years. And the reason, and I could talk a lot about this, the reason is that America, because of certain, let's just say, progressive ideas, I'm not getting into right or wrong, but that has alienated a huge section of the country, which a country is, in my opinion, not defined so much by a geographical boundary, but shared values. And at this point of time, many in America see Russia as being more their country than their country itself. So and this is exactly what J.D. Vance pounced on. I don't think J.D. Vance believes these things himself, but J.D. Vance put on an absolutely marvelous Machiavellian performance. I will again maintain it was J.D. Vance who did that. So what he showed was that I am more, hey, you can't say that about Russia. Stop that. You have to take a step back. You have to say thank you to us, and you can't go there. That is extremely popular. And I would just like to say one thing. Trump, actually, when Marjorie Taylor's boyfriend talked about his suit, Trump later on basically said, don't go there. It's okay. We have played that enough. It's fine. So Trump was still then happy. It was just that. And then Trump went off the rails because, yes, Trump is, it's not a question of whether Trump supports Putin. That I don't think Trump supports anybody. Trump supports only himself. That's a given. It is just that J.D. Vance put that idea into his head. And yes, this will play massively with MAGA's core base. This is an amazing thing that he pulled off.
So it's interesting, Prasad, that MAGA's core base is going to improve, even though the accusation is that Trump was shilling for Putin.
This is playing out the way we think. We have to understand another important thing. Fundamentally, between the Democrats and the Republicans, there is a massive foreign policy disagreement today. You will find Republicans, and led by Trump, actually wanting to realign themselves as friends of Russia, get Russians into their fold. So the EU, Russia, US together against China, because the US sees China as a huge, huge future enemy and an adversary. So that's what they are trying to do, try to realign themselves with Russia, whereas the Democrats see it the other way around. The traditional Russians, the Cold War, USSR, they've been our enemy. So there is a fundamental disagreement in that foreign policy. And I think that foreign policy realignment is happening right now, led by Trump and the Republicans. So I think that is very important to understand. Arnab is right. Trump is nobody's friend. Just like the famous line of Gabbar Singh saying, Ramgarh ke वासियों, आपको सिर्फ एक ही आदमी गब्बर से बचा सकता है, वो है खुद गब्बर. That's it. And Zelensky probably did not understand why he came there yesterday. He thought he could get away again with the US like he had all of these last few visits. He got this privilege of speaking directly, addressing the joint House of Congress, getting all the money from Biden, all the help. He thought that tap is never going to run dry. And so he came with that motive. And here he met a businessman.
Yeah. But Sri, I have to start taking last comments. I'll start with you, Sri. One of our audience members said, at first I thought they were bullies. He's talking about Trump and Vance, but then I watched the entire thing. Zelensky was very rude, and I'm not a Trump voter. Dress up for the meeting. He's not in a uniform or suit. He's the president of a Western country. So this suit thing, which I thought was the most bizarre part of the whole conversation, because one has come to see Zelensky in this as his uniform. This is playing out differently. Your thoughts? Let's start taking last comments. We'll start with you, Sri.
Just to be clear, he has said multiple times over 3 years, I will not put on a suit until the war is over. This is a commander-in-chief. You cannot imagine in India, imagine if there was a war and the prime minister was personally targeted, as he has been by Putin, for assassination. This is a man of immense bravery. And by the way, Arnab said something about the lungi not being India's national dress. If there was a South Indian prime minister, I hope he would come to the White House in a lungi, and that would be okay to our North Indian friends. So the point here, just to underline that there are no winners in this. Nobody benefits from this except Putin. That's what happens here. The entire effort from Putin from 2015 onwards has been to divide America, to highlight the problems and divide America from Europe. And finally, when we keep saying, you hear about an immense mandate, I hear this on the Indian press all the time, he has a mandate. He did not get 50% of the vote. And he got less than 50% of the people who voted. So we're talking about a 30% of America that is 100% behind Trump on anything he does. So keep that in mind. When you hear Americans are this way, Americans are that way, it is not true. And you're going to see, because of the effect on the economy, the way the problems are now showing up for Trump in the economy, that he's going to start to chip away at those numbers as well.
Arnab, you agree?
First of all, I would like to say that there's a difference between a veshti and a lungi. And I just quoted from Wikipedia. So veshti is the formal and lungi is the informal.
I use lungi because you said lungi, sir.
No, that is because lungi is informal. Lungi is informal, veshti is formal. That's what Wikipedia says. I'm sorry. I just copied and pasted it into the chat.
Okay, all right.
So
I think the point you're both making actually not a very different point. Sri is saying anything that is acknowledged to be, it doesn't have to be just the churidar kurta. That's the limited point that he was trying to make. You're making the point about informality and casualness. I don't think this is really a debate. But go ahead.
The point again is not just a question of the dress. The problem is the attitude. And again, as I said, Biden has called it out before. He went in front of the Academy Awards. He has this, I am the star. And you cannot come to ask for money and help by saying, I am the star. You just can't. I'm sorry. He could be a hero to many people. He could be whatever. I don't agree with that personally. But he is definitely, when you come to ask for money or you come to ask for aid, that cannot be your attitude, especially when you have somebody like Trump. If it was Biden, he might have said this behind closed doors. With Trump, given the ambush that he was put in, it was not an ambush for Zelensky. It was actually an ambush for Trump.
Okay, Prasad, very quickly, before Seema and Ambassador Sinha wrap this up for us, any last thoughts?
No, I think last thoughts. Trump is a businessman. I don't think that this is going to cause so much of a problem. If he changes his stance and he comes better prepared with a very clear goal, Trump will be absolutely okay to sit across the table with Zelensky and start the
Correct.
talks again. That is Trump. I don't think that's possible with any other leaders. And going back to the Prime Minister of India, I think both, just like how Trump said, I'm not in favor of this, I'm not in favor of that, I'm in favor of the world and peace. Our Prime Minister said the same thing. He said, I am neither in favor of Russia nor in favor of Ukraine. I am in favor of peace. This is a time for peace. I think it is that fundamental understanding that has actually made the Indian Prime Minister and the President of the US so close to each other. And the trip was a success because their ultimate goal and their thinking is very clear, and there's a good mind melt there.
I mean, I do agree that that visit, compared to all the others that have followed, did go well. But I think that there is a way to clearly handle Trump, and
Yes.
that same conservative Indian diplomacy, cautious, measured, does pay dividends in the long run, even if it doesn't in the short term. Sorry, were you trying to say something, Prasad?
Yes. Yeah. And to Ambassador Sinha's credit, I don't think any Indian Prime Minister would ever do something in a public forum like this that will cause somebody like Ambassador Sinha to sit on the side sofa and sink his head and then nod in disagreement. I don't think it'll ever happen in India. I'm very proud, and I'm
Yes,
sure it'll never happen.
absolutely. Before I give Ambassador Sinha the last word, Seema, what next? What happens now?
Well, there are three ways to end this war, right? One is that America gives more and more lethal weapons. The Europeans support this plan, and the fight goes on. We know that Trump is not in favor of that because he wants to end it. The second option is that Ukraine concedes certain amount of territory that Putin wants, that the Europeans probably are not in favor. The third option is the one that was being played out. And I think it will continue to play out because Trump wants a deal and he will come back to it after heads have cooled, maybe a week or two. But the US foreign policy is changing. So, this traditional way of looking at it, where you have the Democratic Party talking points that liberal world order and everybody should align with each other on the Western side. Forget the global South. The West is all together always, and Putin is the enemy. A lot of guests have referred to the history of this war. Well, how about going back a little bit further back in history? I think the fundamental problem is that NATO expanded and went to the very nose of Putin. Those were the days of Bill Clinton, swaggering on the world stage, unipolar moment. George W. Bush was in the same mold. Now then, they had somebody like Putin who said, you could do this to Gorbachev and to a drunken Russian leader like, what was his name? Yeltsin.
President. Yes, yeah, sorry.
Yeltsin. You can't do that to a brat chick like Putin. He knows his history. He knows everything. So the Europeans played this game. They couldn't have played it without American help. Now they're stuck in it, and this has to end.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the world is suffering,
Yeah.
And that is the bottom line. Forget all this stuff in the, on television that we hear. Oh, this is so offensive. Trump is this, Trump is that. And, liberal world order principles. What principles? There have never been any real principles in foreign policy.
I think that's well said. It may be tough to process for many in America, Ambassador Sinha, who have long touted a values-based order. There is no values-based order. It's every country for itself. It's a Darwinian world. It's the survival of the fittest, and you negotiate within the restrictions you have. You do the best for your own people, for your own nation. I have, on a lighter note, a question. Do you think any head of state is going to agree to go into that Oval Office in the presence of cameras again? Because, I mean, typically, and Seema will bear this out, these meetings in the Oval Office, they're not meant to stretch out for this long for the press. They're meant to be the short, hello, hi, how are you? Great to see you, hugs, kisses, and then out. But Trump has changed all that. So there are always two press conferences that happen, the conversation in the Oval Office and then the second press conference. Your last thoughts, Ambassador Sinha?
Well, yes, I entirely agree with you. You see, we in India would have no tears to shed for the breakdown of the Atlantic Alliance. But the fact is the manner in which it has happened and the manner in which Donald Trump has gone about breaking it up, regardless of what has happened in Ukraine, makes it extremely difficult for countries like India or any other country in the world to find any kind of stability in this. And how do we trust America's word in this? If today he can go and say that Putin is my friend and change the policy of his country, that means that today we have to start calculating, okay, in 2 years' time there'll be midterm polls in America, and then 4 years' time there'll be another president in America. So how does a country like India frame its policies? And how does any other country frame its policies? So the entire geopolitical situation now has become absolutely fluid, because some of the pillars that we had in international politics have fallen apart because of Donald Trump. So yes, we'll have to start rethinking our own defense foreign policy, as will other countries. People have already been talking about the breakdown or the weakening of the international order. But right now what's happened is that they have taken a bulldozer and just rammed into it. So it really is a very difficult time for countries, whether it's India or any other country, that has had relations with the major powers and wants to seek a certain degree of stability in its relations with these countries, so that they can move on to their primary task of development.
Absolutely. We leave it there. In a completely different context, Aldous Huxley called it a brave new world. We're definitely in a brave new world, or if you want to quote the Chinese, living in interesting times, and that's an understatement. I think the one thing that's gone out of the window is predictability. What can you predict? You can't predict it. Even Trump calling Zelensky a dictator, a couple of days later, he said, really? I said that. And countries are going to have to be extremely agile to adapt to this Trump-led world order. We leave it there for now. It's been a fascinating conversation. Seema Siroi, Ambassador Sinha, Sri Prasad Arnab. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you. Have a great weekend and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.